bumper to bumper here from XL Energy Center. It's Mike Russo from The Athletic, coming to you from Kevin Fallness' studio. Kevin, working overtime today. Do you get to put in for these hours? You coming down here super early for me?
Let's say that I don't, but I also don't claim hours I don't work in the summer. So it evens out. And it's not my studio, it's the Bob Kurtz Radio Center.
That is true. And even again this morning, Kevin, your heart is just so full. You could have skipped the skate this morning, but actually came down to Tria Rink.
Did, yeah.
Came down to Tria Rink, and actually just all you had to do is, I mean, probably one button I could have figured out, but you recorded a little pre-tape with Felino and I. And very, very, as everybody always says, especially Brett Blakemore, you are the nicest person at like the fan operation.
Absolutely.
I would agree, and I agree with both of you. Our family's in the meat grinder here. My wife won't let me do anything when it comes to the holiday. So when the holiday comes, it's like an avalanche of garbage that falls on her shoulders, and she's taking it all on herself. We got family in California that she hasn't mailed anything to yet, so she's feeling that heat. She's got her work. So I thought about, all right, I'm going to take this morning off. I'm going to go help her do some shopping or do whatever it is, get boxes, go to the post office. No, instead I put you ahead of my wife, Michael.
Yeah, so I'm sure I'm just on her good graces today.
I didn't use you as an excuse. I just said I have responsibilities, honey.
Well,
she understood.
Yeah, I do appreciate it because you're saving me a lot of hassle having to drive down to St. Louis Park and doing this from there, and then hustling down here to get to the game. Wild play the Utah Hockey Club tonight. We're going to call them the Yetis because that's what we think they're going to be. Or
you
singular.
think so? I think they're going to stick with this.
I don't know.
You know better than I do, but this is growing on me.
Yeah, the way I actually agree with you. Like, make it kind of like a soccer thing. This is actually an idea that Elliot Friedman threw out on his podcast, 32 Thoughts, like a month ago. And at first I'm like, I don't know. And now it does kind of feel that way. But I'm doing a couple Utah stories next week, and unless they got the biggest poker faces ever, they are going to have a nickname pretty soon, and I think it's going to be the Yeti. We've jokingly called them the Utahns, the Utes, things like that. And actually, Nick Bukestad from the Utah Hockey Club will be on the show later today. And typical Bukestad, Minnesota nice. This guy, he's dealing with just a bunch of stuff at home. He gets a call from his wife last night, and finds out that she tore her ACL.
Oh no!
Skiing with a bunch of the Utah Hockey Club player wives and girlfriends yesterday. So they're dealing with that. And then he's going to take the first team bus back to the hotel after the morning skate. And then, of course, I chime in. I'm like, hey, you want to do a little radio interview on the fan? And next thing you know, he's taking the second second bus
what
back.
A guy.
So, typical Nick Bukestad. As I mentioned, we got Marcus Felino on as well. Wild assistant general manager Chris Kelleher. The Wild have 3 assistant general managers. He's one of them. He's in charge, really, of the pro scouting. He's also part of USA Hockey, so we'll have fun chat with him. Alec Lewis, our Vikings writer at The Athletic. Big game, obviously, on Sunday in Seattle, and Alec will be coming on later in the show. And then Joe O'Donnell, the voice of Wild Radio, will be coming in here as well, maybe even the last hour of the show to chat with the Wild. And, you know, Kevin, you and I have been talking about this team in such glowing fashions all year long, understandably so, deservedly so. And even after, it really started in that one game against Montreal where Zuccarello takes the puck to the nether region and Eriksson Ek gets hurt on a shift later. And ever since then, it's just been injury after injury after injury. They were doing so well dealing with it, figuring out a way to replace guys and continuing to win games. But now they're in their first blip of the season. They've dropped 4 of their last 6 games, 2 on the homestand that have been brutal losses. And then they also lost against Vegas Golden Knights. So trying to salvage a little bit of the 5-game homestand tonight against Utah. But, there just comes a point when you take out Philip Gustafsson and Jake Middleton and Lauko and Trennan and obviously Eriksson Ek, that there's too much. You're playing minor leaguers up and down your lineup. Suddenly people start compensating. You lose your structure. You lose all that stuff. And I think it helps explain what's going on here. So the biggest thing here now with 3 games before the break is try to figure out a way to get a couple points, Kevin. But also, when these guys come back, and they are going to be back pretty soon, Gustafsson, Trennan and Eriksson Ek all on the ice this morning, so they're going to be back, whether it's before the break or right after the break. But then they're going to have to figure out a way to get their game back together, because that's not just going to happen magically by throwing healthy bodies in. They've lost their structure a bit here. But what do you think of what's been going on with the team here the last 6 games?
Yeah, that lack of depth was glaringly obvious against the Oilers in particular. When you're without, already know you're going up against two of the best players in the National Hockey League, and you're without Jules Eriksson Ek and Jonas Brodin in that one. And then you lose Jake Middleton 37 seconds into his first shift. That's where I feel like it all came to a head. And it's progressively, they did get the win over against the Flyers, but again, good game against Vegas. You flip a coin, they lose that one. And then the Panthers game again. I just don't think they have the guns right now to battle the top teams in this, in not only the conference, but also the league. And it caught up to them against the Oilers, against the Panthers in particular. So now this is a huge stretch. And regardless of who's in the lineup, you got 3 straight, 2 of them at home going into the holiday break, and all 3 against the Central Division. I'm pretty interested to see what they can do against the Jets tomorrow night on the second of a back-to-back. But these are 3 huge games on their schedule. Without
a doubt. There'll be some lineup changes tonight. Travis Dermott coming in for John Merrill. Not a shock. John's coming off a tough game, but also that game in Utah. He was the guy that was supposed to on both those power play goals by Clayton Keller. Frontum did not. So Dermott will get that opportunity tonight. Travis Boyd will be the scratch. I think, judging by the lines from this morning's morning skate, they will have an all minor league 4th line tonight with Brendan Gaughan centering Ben Jones and Devin Shore, which means for the first time really since earlier in the season, Murat Huzdinov will get a little elevation in the lineup, play on the 3rd line with Marcus Foligno and now Ryan Hartman back to playing right wing. Earlier this season, when Ryan, before Joel Eriksson got hurt, when he was playing wing, playing much better than he is now. Right now, Hartman, 1 goal in his last 21 games. No points in his last 13, and unsolicited in the last couple of days, John Hines keeps on mentioning that 3rd goal against by Florida, where clearly Ryan Hartman got upset behind the net, got a cross check from Barkov, wasn't called, comes back in the neutral zone, tried to take a run at Barkov, missed, and next thing you know, they scored the 3rd goal, which turned out to be the goal that really turned the game around. Yeah, I mean, you can go for extended periods of time with a guy like Trennan not getting points, or a guy like Murat Huzdinov not getting points. That's not their role. But a guy like Ryan Hartman has to chip in offensively, and it felt like he was doing pretty well with that early on this season. But like you talk about with that dry spell that he's currently going through, maybe this is a good reset for him. Get on that right line, on that right wing. We know how he plays with Marcus Foligno typically, and he gets the speedy Murat Huzdinov in the middle. I'm anxious to see how he responds to this current setup. Marc-Andre Fleury getting the start tonight against Utah, obviously. I would think that Jesper Wallstedt is starting tomorrow night in Winnipeg, although John Hines wouldn't confirm that yet today. He said, let's get through tonight and see how it goes. But that would make the most sense because they have pronounced that Gustafsson isn't going to play in that game, and I just don't think they're going to go with a 40-year-old on back-to-back games. They didn't do it earlier when they could have played Fleury back-to-back. They brought Wallstedt up to play against Vegas. So we'll see. Tough spot for Wallstedt going to Winnipeg, though. Are you surprised that maybe they don't flip that? I mean, this is a very important one, though, too. Yeah. Because they haven't played well on home ice all season long, and especially this 5-game homestand. They dropped 3 of the first 4. I think that they know how tough tomorrow night's going to be just playing. It's kind of, I hate to use the term, but the old schedule loss, like with the game in LA, where you just know that they're not going to have the legs. So you just kind of are going to roll the dice tomorrow night anyway and just hope that you can come out with a point or 2. But tonight's the game that you got to get. And if you put Wally in tonight, now you lose to a red hot Utah team, and now you're throwing Fleury in tomorrow on a game where the Wild are almost considering that they probably are not going to be able to win that game. Now you've dropped 4 points here. And that was sort of the same reason. A lot of people wondered in the Anaheim LA, why wouldn't you go with your better goalie against the better team in LA on the second of back-to-back? And we saw there they went with what they thought was their best goalie, and Gus got the 2 points that they wanted to get, and then you roll the dice against LA. And I think it's the same rationale here. I know a lot of people don't like to hear it that way, but they are looking at like tonight's the night that they really have the chance to get 2 points, and then tomorrow you roll the dice and see if you can figure out a way to steal a point or 2 up against a rested Winnipeg team. Utah is playing really, really well right now. They're 7-1-2 in their last 10. They have a 6-game point streak, including that game in against Minnesota, where they rallied a couple times in the third period, and eventually Marco Rossi saved the day to get the Wild a point, and then at second point with the Boldy shootout winner.
They've also won 6 in a row on the road.
Yes, I mean they are playing well. They are a good hockey team. Yeah. I mean they've had a lot of injuries themselves, especially on the back end. But you have Sergachev there. You have Kesselring with Dursey out. He has suddenly become a real go-to guy there. You have a lot of real young quality kids. Lamoureux's hurt right now, but he's going to be great. I mean, we know that Cooley, obviously all University of Minnesota fans know him. Dylan Gunther's going to be a stud. And then they've got this run of kids coming, the Tidgy Ginlas eventually and people like that. They are doing things the right way in Utah. I feel like I know a lot about them right now because I'm working on a couple stories next week. But they are just, not only are they a great hockey team, they're back in the National Hockey League. Yeah. They got a great owner. Yeah. And that was half the battle in Arizona, where they're, not paying their bills and staying at crummy hotels and all this stuff. I mean, today, I mentioned the thing with Bukestad taking the second bus. The team services guy goes to him, you can take an Uber, keep the receipt, and just give it to me, and we'll reimburse you. And I'm just thinking to myself, that's not what would have happened in Arizona. Yeah, this is now a real hockey team.
I got a chance to talk to Dermott a little bit this morning. I talked to him a lot about when he was claimed off of waivers a couple of days ago, but now he's back in the lineup tonight, and just asking him about the differences when he was there. And I'm sure it was great. You're in the National Hockey League and all that, but playing at that arena in front of 5,000 fans, it can't feel like a real experience, like a real NHL situation. And now they've got a new lease on life. They go to the Delta Center that you saw firsthand, and how the ownership is treating that club now compared to how it was. It has to be night and day.
Yeah, we could talk more about that when we get back from the break. I'd like to give a little bit of my experiences in Utah and some of the inside stuff of some of that I'll be writing next week. When we come back from the break, though, if you want to text over at the Bradshaw and Bryant text line, that's 64686. You can also call the show at 1-800-320-5326, and we'll get you right on the air here. Next segment is devoted to you, the fans, if you have any questions on the Wild. But then again, Chris Kelleher coming up as well, Nick Bukestad, Marcus Foligno, Alec Lewis from The Athletic will be talking about that big Vikings game this week. And then Joe O'Donnell, the voice of the Wild, will be in here the last hour as well. This is Michael Russo from Kevin Fallon's studio inside the bowels of XL Energy Center. We'll be back here on The Fan.
Join the Power Trip Zach Halverson at Treasure Island tonight for a Daughtry pre-party and parlay. Join starting at 4 p.m. for a chance to win last-minute tickets and upgrades. Full details now, KFAN.com, keyword calendar.
Back here on The Fan, Michael Russo inside Kevin Fallon's studio, the Bob Kurtz
Radio Center.
Radio Center, as
homage to the great Bob Kurtz.
Yes, exactly. And we'll have Joe O'Donnell coming from his mentor's room later today. Is that what we should call Joe?
I mean, you have to ask Joe if Bob was his mentor, or am I his mentor? Are you saying Bob's his mentor?
No, I think it's better that you're Joe's mentor.
I don't think I'm Joe's mentor. Joe tolerates me as much as you tolerate me, and we have fun with it.
Yes, exactly.
Tom tolerates me more. We do the listener segment in between during the intermissions, and we weren't working. I don't think Joe's tired of me yet.
No,
his day will come.
Yeah, it will definitely come, without a doubt. All right, so Utah tonight, 7 o'clock puck drop, 7:08 puck drop. Pregame show starts
6:45.
Oh no!
Yeah.
So what are we doing from
pregame?
So what are you doing from 6:15 to 6:45?
That's between Brett Blakemore, Chad Abbott, and everyone else at iHeartRadio. There's only so much I can control. What's happening when Brett? I believe it's probably Vikings program, if I had to guess.
We got Skull Stories at 6:30.
Nice.
All right. Well, good. Do you want to
cool.
get into some of these texts from 64686?
Yep, I already told my first person off on that text line.
Yes, you did.
All in caps.
Yeah, using my name on there, so that's great. This is what we do in the intermissions. So for fans that are just listening, we call it Tom Reed's Hotline. We do this every night. We give away Wild tickets. We give away dinner to Tom Reed's Hockey City Pub. Somehow we get our hands on some gift certificates for that. So I'm well versed on using 64686. Now they're rolling in, and they're directed towards you. We'll start with this one from the 612 area code. Michael, taking my boys to the game tonight, and they're huge Brock Faber fans. Do you know his status against the Utah Hockey Club?
Yeah, he's fine. He's going to be in the lineup tonight. The puck actually, thankfully, hit him on the right side of the neck. He said that it's today that he feels more like strep throat. I think he hurt his larynx. Thankfully, nothing major happened there. Because when you see a guy rush off the ice having trouble breathing. It's scary for him, and I know that his teammates were shook as well. He was up and at him. They did bring him to the hospital after the game via ambulance, just precautionary measures. You don't want him to, all of a sudden he's driving home or gets home and next thing you know, you have a collapsed larynx or something. So thankfully he is fine, because that was scary, especially the way things are going right now. To see him rush off the ice, you're just thinking, what else is going to happen to this team? And thankfully he is fine.
A hot button topic over the last 12 months or so have been those neck guards.
Yeah.
But it doesn't sound like the neck guard would have done him much good in this instance regardless.
Yeah, well, it hit him on the right side of the neck, and obviously those are meant for skates, so you would think it would protect this. I don't know why these guys don't use it. I mean, it's just...
It's like the visors.
Yeah.
I can't believe guys still don't wear visors.
There's like 10 or 11 guys in the league that don't wear wear the neck guards right now, including Jacob Lauko, who needed to have that scare in Chicago last season for him to go that route. And I noticed the other night, Dan O'Rourke, the referee, is wearing a neck guard, and I reached out to him, and he's like, "Yeah, I want to be a model." To some of his brethren in the officiating. I mean, it's just, to me, it's better be safe than sorry. And I did a story earlier this season when I talked to Lauko about this, and he just said, look, your first couple practices, it feels odd, and then next thing you know, you don't even feel it anymore. It's just part of your equipment, and I just don't get why these guys don't give it a try.
I've got kids in youth hockey, and they mandate it like mouth guards now on that level, and I know that it's taken hold, especially in Minnesota. I don't know what it's like elsewhere outside of this state's borders, but it feels like it's only a matter of time before it graduates to the NHL, but they're so stubborn in their ways.
Bill Daly has made it, the NHL deputy commissioner has made it abundantly clear that he has brought this to the NHLPA many, many times, and the hope is that they can eventually get there, and I think they're going to try, but it's still, unless it's collectively bargained, it cannot be mandated. And, it's to me, it's a concern. It makes no sense. The one that really makes no sense to me is that they are mandating it this season in the AHL. And we have seen examples both here and elsewhere where guys are called up from the AHL and take it off in the NHL. Yeah. And then when they go back to the AHL, they put it back on because they have to. Why take it off? Like, what is the problem? It just makes no sense to me.
Here's another one from Dave in Park Rapids. Read today that the Wild are still fielding offers on Marco Rossi. Is there any truth to this? From David in Park Rapids. Yeah, I mean,
I'm going to be doing a story on Marco next week, and I'm going to be chatting with a couple people from the organization tonight on this story. But the one thing that I have gathered here the last week or two is that is no longer the case. Now, they're not going to sign him now, I don't think. I think they're going to wait till after the season. But I think that he has proven himself to them. And I think that, I've been saying this on my podcast for weeks now. Like, I get that they got Urov coming. I get there's an edict this summer to maybe go and sign a free agent or two. But Marco Rossi is here. Marco Rossi is the one that's performing. Until we actually see Urov come over, until we actually see Urov play center and stay healthy, until we actually see Urov function at this level and perform, Marco Rossi is the one that's doing it. And it just would be a shame that you spend all of this time developing a guy. We all know in this organization they have had a trouble developing centers. Very few guys, Mikko Koivu one, Yul Eriksson another, name another, really, that they've drafted and developed. I mean, Bouchard was a right wing here for the most part. Granlund was a right wing here, even though they were drafted at center. So you have this guy that's done absolutely everything asked of him, skips his sister's wedding, spends all 2 summers here ago, skips the Austrian Olympic qualifiers last year, and he's done all this under the wherewithal of wanting to become a top player for this team, and he is just performing right now, and I think that he's proven it themselves. Is he a perfect player? No. Who is? McDavid, maybe?
Yeah.
Everybody's got warts, but the one wart that you always hear about him is that he's undersized and all this stuff. Well, where does he score all his goals from? Where does he get most of his chances from? Right in front of the net. This guy's got unbelievable courage, and I just think that it would be a shame. So I don't think anymore that they'll look for him. Obviously, anybody is attainable if you offer the right deal, but I just think that there's no reason why, unless you're getting some crazy no-brainer deal, that you don't at a minimum bridge him this summer. It's not going to be an easy long-term deal to negotiate, because right now we don't know what the cap is. If the cap goes up significantly, if they get the new CBA done, that changes the landscape for a lot of players, especially Kaprizov. They need to know what Kaprizov's number is. He doesn't have arb rights this offseason, so there's that little leverage thing that's more on the Wild's court. But I just think that they have even seen that this guy has done everything that they've asked from him and is performing right now.
From the 651 area code, this listener and or texter says, heard you talk about the fact that you're going to talk to Marcus Foligno. As mentioned, the interview has already happened, but I know you said that he talked a little bit about the Timberwolves. He wants you to ask Foligno why he left the Timberwolves game at halftime last night, probably because the Wolves were getting shellacked. Did he touch on that?
Yeah, he did say that they started out hot and then it got ugly real quick, but I think the reason why he left was more so the Wild have a game today, and they, even though the morning skates starts at 10:30, these guys have to be here way earlier than that for PK meetings and things like that. And obviously the PK is something that Marcus Foligno talks about as, on this interview has been a thorn in the Wild side all season long, all last season, 2 seasons ago as well. And they had meetings this morning. Obviously the big key tonight is doing a much better job fronting Clayton Kelleher than they did in Utah. But I think that was probably why he left at halftime is get home.
From the 612 area, what time did you say you're running Foligno?
That is at, I believe, 4:55.
4:55. So make sure you tune into that.
As Brett could attest, the segments are a little truncated today, and we're trying to figure out some things. But I think we're going to go at 4:45 for that.
It's going to work exactly as we want.
Yeah,
that's right.
Perfect. So be sure to tune into that. Russo's conversation.
Might be 4:55 actually
with the Moose. 4:55 ish.
I think so.
You know what? Just don't stop listening. Eventually you'll hear it.
Whatever.
You'll listen right up to 6:45 when we get ready for the Wild pregame. Quick one here from the 612 area code. Actually, I don't know if it's quick. What are some realistic moves the Wild could make this upcoming season, especially with Parise and Suter for the most part off the books? He feels like the fan base has some unrealistic expectations of what the Wild are going to do with this quote-unquote all-new cap space.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's 14.7, but if you include Rossi and his overages this year, it's actually 15.4 in dead money that the Wild have. Well, that could go all to Kaprizov. I mean, frankly, he is. If that cap is going to be 110 in 2 years, he's not going to just take 14 or 15. So that's the big thing. They need to know what that number is. But you're right. I mean, the cap is going up. It could be 92.5 next year, or it could be 97. So that does not leave a lot of wiggle room. Obviously, the Kaprizov contract doesn't start till the year after, but you got to re-sign Marco Rossi. And if Rossi's getting a bridge deal, obviously that makes it a little less. If he's getting a long-term deal, we're talking higher than 7. I mean, Dylan Cousins is making 7-1. Yeah. Rossi on a long-term deal is going to be told that number quickly when the Wild negotiate that. I do think that they'll want to go out and get at least one forward, but they got to know what Kaprizov's number is going to be. One forward that I do think that they would have interest in as a UFA if he's not re-signed by the Islanders is Brock Nelson. I think that's one guy the Wild would even eye at the trade deadline this year. But right now in LTIR, all bets are off. I mean, as Bill Guerin said to us last week when they claimed Travis Dermott off waivers, I asked him point blank, does LTI really foul up what your potential plans were for the trade deadline to accrue cap space and go get a top 6 forward? And he basically said, yeah, it probably does. And that's the thing with the Wild and LTI. Everything is just messed up here. They did a really good job of accruing space at the start of the season, but the injuries the last couple weeks has put them in an LTI situation with Middleton. And what that means is that every time they're in above the cap ceiling, they're not accruing space and they're eating into what they already accrued. So that just takes you out of a potential trade deadline move. Possibly. They'd love to get Middleton back and then start accruing space again. That's why you're seeing juggling here the last couple of days where Devin Shore is going up and down. Like they're trying, like Matt Sells, who runs their cap, is essentially trying to do everything possible on the off days to get below the cap, accrue a little, then they got to go back in the LTIR and all that stuff. So, speak of assistant general managers, Chris Kelleher is going to be right around the corner. He just spent some time in Iowa. We'll ask him about what's going on with David Juracek, and Liam Ogren's been on fire down there. He's also the director of player personnel for USA Hockey, not just the Olympic team, but the Four Nations tournament coming up as well. We'll be talking to Bill Guerin's right-hand man when we're back here on The Fan.
The Fan and Shields want to make your holiday shopping a little easier this year. Whether you're shopping for the perfect gift or treating yourself, this is a contest you don't want to miss. Head over our contest page for your chance to win a $450 gift card. That's KFAN.com keyword contest to enter.
Back here at XL Energy Center, Michael Russo from The Athletic filling in for Dan Barreiro on this just frigid Friday here in the Twin Cities. and Kevin Falness, taking over his very nicely smelling studio. Got the wonderful candle going. Really always appreciate that every time I'm here. Really happy to be joined by somebody that Wild fans will get to know more and more and more, even though they really should know him now, but some beat writer wasn't doing his job since 2009 to profile this man. But he has done absolutely everything in this organization for every GM that's ever worked for the Wild. Started as a pro scout for 10 years, then director of pro scouting, then director of player personnel. Now in his first year as assistant general manager, and he's from the Boston University contingent that included John Hines, Mike Greer, and his college roommate, Chris Drury. Chris Kelleher, how are you?
I'm good, Michael. How are you doing?
Good. I appreciate you joining. And I know that you've been running around I know that as a pro scout, and that is still your big job with the Wild, you go to games all the time for your day job, which is the Minnesota Wild. But really for the last 3 months as well, you've been running around for your other job as the right-hand man for Bill Guerin for USA Hockey, your director of player personnel there, with also his assistant general managers, Tom Fitzgerald, Bill Zito, and Chris Drury, your college roommate. But you've picked yourselves a really quality Four Nations team that I know a lot of people are really excited about going into this February tournament in Montreal and Boston. But you've come up with a heck of a roster. And how excited are you for this tournament? And how good do you think you can be?
Yeah, we're very excited. There was a lot of hard decisions, which I think is great for, the state of hockey in the United States. I mean, there's so many players that you could almost pick two teams, right? So
yeah.
It kind of got down to some of the guys, there was a lot of hard decisions. But it's really exciting. I think we've been working on it since the summer, and then to have it when it was finally announced, it was almost like it was just like a sigh of relief, like it was really exciting, but it was like a sigh of relief. So, and now we continue. Hopefully the roster we put out there is the one that we show up on February 12th, but who knows if that happens with injuries or whatever it may be. So we're still, we're still out there. I'm watching a lot of games, so I'm still watching the guys that we've talked about before or might be on the bubble or may need to replace. So, it's just, it's really exciting. I think it's going to be awesome, the hockey. A lot of people will say our team is, looks great on paper. But you look at Canada, you look at Finland, Sweden, they're all good. These are the best players in the world. So, just because we may be one of the deepest on paper, it doesn't mean necessarily during the tournament. You gotta play the games. So I think it's going to be incredible hockey. I think the fans are going to love it. I think I'm just really excited.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, Jack Hughes and Brady Tkachuk, they got the phone calls from Tom Fitzgerald. Brady Tkachuk and Matthew are actually Tom's cousins. And then Jack Hughes obviously plays for the Devils. Bill Guerin called everybody else on Thanksgiving Day except for one person, and that was Zach Werenski, because Zach found out a couple days before this. And tell that story, because you were part of it in Columbus scouting the Blue Jackets.
Yeah. It was a great... it's kind of great the way it happened, and it kind of happened by chance. So Billy and I went there to watch Zach, really. He's been playing so well, and so anyways, we let's go watch him in person. So we did, and then after we went out for dinner, and the place started, everybody was kind of leaving, and we were kind of hanging around, and all the Blue Jackets started to come in. So we're like, oh, great. And, there's a couple guys there that know Billy just because he's Billy. And so they come over. And so they had a room in the back. So they all go back. And, I look at Billy. I'm like, you think we should tell him in person? And he goes, yeah, that would be a great idea. So it was kind of both our ideas. But anyways, I just thought, I'm like, you're only going to get to call everybody else. So I'm like, it'd be kind of cool. So he sends the waitress back or waiter and says, can you get Zach Werenski and his fiance to come out here? So they came out, and Billy, and he said, oh, sorry, I just wanted to come out here because I forgot my wallet. I was hoping you could pick up the tab. And his fiance right away goes, if he's on Team USA. And so Billy's like, well, then I guess you're picking up the tab. And just to see his reaction and his fiance's reaction in person, it means so much to these guys. He was like, I've been thinking about this all season.
That's awesome.
You know what I mean? He's like, he was so excited, but it was almost like a sigh of relief. Like he was like, "It's just unbelievable. It's going to be great." It was really cool. It was a good story. It was fun to be able to see his reaction and tell him in person.
And he, as you know, Chris, he probably played his way onto the team. I mean, for the most part, a lot of these guys had the inside tracks. You knew some of the guys that were going to be on there, even if they weren't part of the six last June. But he had to prove himself. Him and Hannafin and guys like Matt Boldy. I mean, they had to play their way on here.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And you know what? They did. Like that. I mean, those guys were all in the big pool of names that we had, and they just. Like, if we didn't take Zach Werenski, like he's arguably playing the best out of the defensemen we took this season.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, he showed us like, hey, I want to be on this team, and I'm going to show you why, and he did it. And like Bold.
Oh, you there, Chris?
Guy.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah. Did I break up?
Yeah, you did, but we got you again.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, all those guys again. I think they just. It's so nice for us that they played their way on. It made our decisions easier with those guys.
Yeah, that's awesome. And again, February 12th to the 21st is the tournament in both Montreal and Boston. We'll call it a 2026 Winter Olympics appetizer, which I'm excited to cover and also cover the Four Nations. This is Michael Russo from The Athletic. We're talking with Chris Kelleher, the Wild assistant general manager. And you just came back from Des Moines, where you spent some time there watching the Iowa Wild. They're starting to play really well. And I know I get a lot of tweets on an everyday basis asking for updates on how David Jiricek is playing. When we could see him in the Minnesota lineup right away. Obviously, make the big trade. You give up a lot to get him. But as Billy said that night of the trade, this is not necessarily just for the now. This is an investment into the future. And the big thing is to get his game going right. And so how is he playing down there?
He's playing well. He's getting acclimated to our we play obviously a different system, a different structure from Columbus. So I think he's starting to learn that and starting to understand how we want to play. I think it was great that when we first traded him, we had him in for like a week, I think, maybe.
Yeah.
So he was around the coaches. He practiced under John Hines' practices and around our NHL guys. So he sees what we do and how we do it, and he got familiar with the trainers, everything. So I think that was a huge thing for him. And now he's just going to go down and play. Like, he's a really talented player. I think there's times where he's probably trying to justify the trade in one shift, if that makes sense. Like,
yep.
Maybe he's trying to do a little too much right now, but that's okay. Like, you don't want to take away his skills or creativity or any of that. But he's doing well. Here, he's younger than a lot of the guys we have down there. So he's coming along, and it's an investment. It's not a here and now thing. We don't really need him right now. So I think it's great. He's down there and playing a ton of minutes.
Does he understand that? Is he willing to be patient? Because obviously, a lot of the scuttlebutt out of Columbus is that he wanted to not only play, but play top 4 minutes, right? Top 4 defense pair minutes right off the hop in Columbus. Wasn't exactly enthralled by being sent to Cleveland. Does he get that this is a new organization that has different expectations, and that, Bill Guerin's way is that guys have to go down to and pay their dues and be ready to step in and be impactful once they get here? We saw it with Rossi, we saw it with Boldy, and now we might see it with Jiricek.
Yeah, I think he does. I know Billy had a long conversation with him about the plan, and listen, we didn't give up all that we gave up to just, to not make sure it does. We're doing the right thing by you, mm-hmm. And he understands that. He knows he's down there to play. He's down there to learn our structure, our system, and get better. Like he said, he just turned 21. Like, defensemen take longer, and bigger defensemen take a little bit longer to develop and get there. And again, we don't want to bring him up and then, until he's ready. So I think he's definitely on board with the plan. And again, you've seen it with Boldy, you've seen it with Rossi. Sometimes it's okay to let them marinate down in the American League for a little bit longer. There's no rush, and fortunately enough right now, we're playing good enough where we don't really need them.
Right, and everybody's not Brock Faber. I mean, he's a special, special player, obviously, to step in right from college and be as impactful as he is.
Those guys are few and far between, right?
Yeah.
Like, again, there's there's not too many of those guys.
Yeah. Speaking of, guys that are few and far between, Zev Williams had an unbelievable year at University of Denver. Again, he fell right into your lap at the draft. Now he's going to World Juniors. How excited are you for him? And same thing with him. I mean, even if you sign him after this season, I mean, this is, again, not everybody's Brock Faber. I mean, he might step in right away, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he's not going to be in Iowa at times in the future. How excited is the organization about Zev?
Really excited. I went to see him last weekend. I went to Colorado College. Denver was playing there, and he's a really talented guy. Like he's a lot different than kind of what we have as far as he's really offensive. He's got great feet, great on the power play, and I think he's 6 foot. But he's strong. He's sturdy. Like he's really, really competitive. Like that's when I left that game. Never mind all his puck skills and offense and like what he can do that way because it's elite. His competitiveness down low in the D zone from last year when I saw him to now, it's unbelievable.
Awesome.
He's a really, really competitive, really talented. I think eventually when he gets to us, our fans are going to love him and be excited about him because he's little.
We're talking with Chris Kelleher, the Wild assistant general manager. And Chris, Liam Ogren's had 10 goals in 14 games down in Iowa. You just watched him as well. This is something that we didn't really get to see him in that type of role in Minnesota. And even when he did, we didn't see him that aggressive. Do you feel like this is the best place for him right now, and he's just got to continue to really play this way, and then eventually you'll need him and bring him up here rather than a lot of the AHL depth guys that you signed this offseason?
Yeah. I think you said it before. We want to bring him up when he's ready to stay up here full time. We don't need a young kid going up and down and playing that, kind of yo-yo and, not sure when he comes up, he's nervous, not trying to do much. Just leave him down, let him play. He's scoring goals. He's doing well. We want, when we call him up next, hopefully that's the end of it and he's ready. So that's kind of what our plan is with him, and he's playing really well. So.
And lastly, Chris, you talked about this the other day on a podcast, and I love this story about your one NHL game. I've joked with you before. I really want to go through almost the Wild media guide and talk to the Tyler Kumas in the world that played that one game of their memories. And you played one game for the 2001-2 Boston Bruins, your hometown Bruins, at Joe Louis Arena. No, it was at TD Garden against the Red Wings, right?
Yeah.
So, just tell fans about that story, about your memories of one NHL game and how you actually feel that's a great rite of passage, that you didn't get 3 or 4, that one is kind of the cool thing.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely wanted a lot more than one, but I feel like, and I'll tell the story after, but I feel like if one is a little bit more unique than, say, 2 or 3, right? So I was playing in Providence at the time, and my coach, Bill Armstrong, who's the Utah GM now,
tonight,
called me and told me that I was going to go play the afternoon up in Boston against Detroit, and it was a Saturday afternoon game. I think it was like on NBC, or it was the game of the week or whatever it was, and so I just jumped in my car right away and driving up to Boston and calling my parents and my brothers and everybody, and and it happened to be on my dad's birthday. So, that was pretty unique too. And, like I say before, my brothers can never top that birthday present. So I always win there. But so we get up there, and I get up there like 3 hours early because I'm just so excited. And then, get up there, get in the locker room, and nobody's there. Like the trainers and everybody there, but no players. So, so then I start getting nervous, and I start looking at the roster on the board. I'm like, oh boy, the Red Wings, like Fedorov, Hull, Yzerman, Lidstrom, Zetterberg, Datsuk, Chris Draper, like all these guys. And I'm like, God, there is no way I can do this. And I remember, I think it was Hal Gill, came in and he goes, oh, congratulations, this is awesome. He goes, I've been nervous for this game all year. And I'm like, oh man. So then it just gets worse, right? And, Billy Guerin's on the team. I think he was the assistant captain. And I remember Robbie Fatorik before the game, he's going through the roster and he's saying how great they are, and this guy's great, and this and that. And Billy just stopped him. He said, "Hey, they put their skates on the same way we do. Let's go out there and beat them in a nicer way, or maybe not so nice way." But anyways, so then we went out. I played like 12 minutes, and I remember I had a shift that was like I got stuck out on a shift, and I was battling Thomas Holmstrom in the front of the net, which was pretty hard to do. And I watched the game after. I know Bill Clement said, "Well, it's his first game, and he's trying to make a career out of this shift." So, but it was a really exciting day, and everything was great. And and then I had to go back down to Providence and play the next day on a Sunday.
Yeah,
so that was the end of it. But I
love the part of the. I love the part of the story
cool.
where you said you quickly dressed and tried to get out of there because you figured if they can't find you, they can't send you down.
I tried, but it didn't work. It didn't work. Robbie Fattori got me, so I didn't make it out. But
isn't it crazy
still,
isn't it crazy when you think about it? Like you're thinking 23 years ago, and you're a teammate with Bill Guerin, and now you're now you work for him, and your head coach is John Hines, who's on your college team. You're on the same USA Hockey staff with your college roommate and Chris Drury. You got Mike Greer over in San Jose having the best young player in the league right now in Celebrini. I mean, it's pretty just a small hockey world, right?
Well, the hockey world is so small. Like somebody who knows somebody. Like it's just. I mean, it's just I was in Nashville last night watching a game, and one of my other roommates and college teammates is Jeff Kelty, who's the assistant GM in Nashville. I saw him last night. So, and then I saw Colby Armstrong, who I played with, and it's just the hockey world is incredible, as you know, and it's a really small world and a tight knit group, and I really am, and you are too. We're fortunate to be a part of it.
Yeah, without a doubt. Well, hey, Chris, I really appreciate the time, especially after I know it's a holiday season. You just landed from Nashville as well, and so I really appreciate you coming on today. Yep.
Oh, anytime.
Yep.
Enjoy coming on.
Yep. And and you're going to get to, hopefully I'm not ruining a surprise, but you're going to get to have your family here for the Ottawa game, right?
Yeah. I'm going to bring my 4 kids, and my mother's coming too. So that'll be, my mother and my son have seen games out there, but my 3 daughters haven't. So they kind of mentioned something to me beginning of the season, like, well, how come we've never been to Minnesota? And I'm like, oh, that's a good point. So I'm really excited.
You've only worked for the organization for 17 years. You've only worked here for 17 years. You'd think you'd get them tickets once.
I know. You sound like one of my daughters, Michael.
So,
that's what they say
Chris,
to me.
Appreciate it, and we'll see you right after the break.
Okay, sounds good, Mike. Thanks. Have a great Christmas, buddy.
Yep, you too. That is Chris Kelleher, Wild assistant general manager. Has worked for everybody from Doug Risebrough to Chuck Fletcher to Paul Fenton to now Bill Guerin, and he's just been here for absolutely ever, and now he's assistant general manager. This is Michael Russo from The Athletic. We'll be back here on The Fan. If you want to text the show, do it. If you want to call the show, do it. We have one segment left before we get to Alec Lewis. We'll be back.